up, gang? Welcome to the channel. I'm back with another video, man. Actually just got off work, but I wanted to tap in with y'all real quick, and I want to have just some real talk with you guys. I want to talk about some situations that you can find yourself in that can really just eat away at your paychecks and make it a lot harder for you to build wealth and save and invest your money. So some of y'all watching right now, I'm pretty sure, are in some of these situations. I know for me, I actually experienced some of the things that I'm going to talk about, so I've been there. But hopefully if you're not in some of these situations, you can avoid them, hopefully. But again, if you are, we'll talk about some solutions. So let's just go ahead and get into it, man. Some situations that can really just eat away at your paychecks. The first one, I'm gonna say, is child support, man. Just seeing those deductions coming out your paycheck weekly or bi-weekly, it can hurt. I know firsthand. I was on child support for several years with my daughter. I got off about 3 years ago. But man, when I was on it, it was tough. So let me just share my child support story with you guys real quick before I move on to the other situations. When I got ordered to pay child support, I was working at a job where I was making about $55,000 a year. And if you know anything about child support, they pretty much base it off your income, you and your partner, right? So I was ordered to pay $700 a month. Actually, I was ordered to pay $695 a month, but they also ordered me to put my daughter on my medical and health insurance. So when I did that, that basically took that amount over $700 a month. But what happened was I got laid off from that job. And when I did, I went out, got my CDL, and then got my first trucking job. Well, that first trucking job, I was making $10,000 less a year. So basically about $45,000. So I was getting paid significantly less. But for me at the time, you know, I knew coming out of trucking school, it probably was going to be a little bit challenging for me to find a decent paying job. So I was, you know, had to take that sacrifice. But it was tough. So when I got that job, I actually went to the child support office to try to get that amount reduced. I tried to get a reduction on my child support payments just due to my circumstances, because there are certain circumstances where you are able to get your child support reduced. But unfortunately for me, that wasn't one of them. So they denied my request for a reduction, and I pretty much had two options. I either could stay on the struggle bus or make something happen. I made something happen. I stayed at that job making $45,000 a year. I didn't even stay there a year. I only stayed 4 months. Shout out to GFS. I got up and found me a higher paying job, man, so I could have more money at the end of the month. When I got the job with GFS, that $700 a month I was paying didn't even faze me. I was making twice as much money. Everything was sweet. But I said all that to say, if you are somebody who's in that type of situation right now, and your child support payments are really putting you in a situation where you're struggling with everything else that you got going on with your expenses, you might have to do the same thing, man. If you're working, you know, whatever primary job that you're working right now, if that's not enough, you're gonna have to go out and make something happen. find a side job, or a side hustle, I should say, maybe a part-time job, or find a higher paying full-time job like I did. Find something to help supplement your income. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to struggle. So that's the first thing, that child support. Child support can be tough on a lot of people, man. Like I said, I've been there, done that. Getting off of it was one of the best feelings I ever had. So the next thing, and we just keeping it real, a failed relationship and or failed marriage, which led to a divorce, particularly if you're having to pay alimony. Again, these are some other situations that can really just eat away at your income. Let's start with the failed relationships first. This is a couple that may be, or that is unmarried, and let's just say you guys were living together, right? Let's say the guy moved in with the lady, and you guys, for whatever reason, broke up, and now you have to move out the house. If your income was based on relying on your partner to help contribute to the expenses, and you no longer have that contribution coming in anymore, you got to ask yourself, before you get into those type of situations, you got to play out a worst case scenario in your mind and do the math. Look at your expenses, know how much it's gonna cost for you to rent an apartment if need be, if anything were to happen. Know how much the utilities are. Just run all the numbers and see if you can actually afford to live on your own if you had to. Because at the end of the day, anything can happen. So let's just say you got kicked out of there. Now you're struggling because you had help. Now you don't have that help anymore. You got to do everything on your own. Can you afford to do that? Well, you may have some options. Obviously, you may be able to go back to a parent's house if you have parents that live in the same state that you're in, or maybe a sibling, or maybe you have a friend and you guys can, you know, do the roommate situation. I'm just throwing some options out there. Maybe that's a possibility. Or maybe you can afford it to live on your own. But these are the type of things that you have to think about when you enter into those type of situations. So just think about that if you're considering moving in with somebody else. Now, if you have somebody moving in with you, you probably won't have to worry about shelter and going to stay anywhere. But if that person was helping contribute to your bills, if you needed them to take care of all your monthly expenses, that's one thing. But if you didn't, you should be fine. So that's the second thing, man. A failed relationship, particularly if you plan on moving in with somebody or somebody moving in with you. Don't find yourself relying on somebody else's income. Make sure you can afford it no matter what, whether you guys together or not. Make sure you're able to afford it, because at the end of the day, anything can happen. All right, so that's the failed relationship piece. Now let's talk about the failed marriage piece, to the point to where it goes into a divorce type of situation, right? So now you have the possibility of having to pay alimony. Yeah. So I think marriage can be a great thing. Everybody have their own views around marriage. I know a lot of guys don't have any desire to be married. I know some women that don't have any desire to be married. So, you know, everybody has their own views. I have some family and friends that have been married for a very long time. And I also know some people who have gotten divorced. And a couple of them got divorced really early. But the people I know who had a divorce, they didn't have to pay alimony or anything like that. Maybe because they didn't have much. So they kind of lucked out there. But I do know some people, well, let me not say people. I know somebody in particular. This person actually happens to be one of my old managers. He got a divorce. I'm just gonna park right here so I can talk to you guys real quick. He got a divorce, and this was like several years ago. This was like 2013, 14, somewhere around there. This man got a divorce from his wife, and he ended up having to give her half his 401k. He ended up having to give her the house, and he ended up having to pay alimony. So he got hit pretty hard. And that's the fear that a lot of men in particular have when you talk about marriage. Guys just don't want to lose everything in a marriage, right? So that's why, you know, you want to do your prenup. If you do go into it and you fear risking all your money or whatever, hopefully you guys can have that conversation together, and, you know, you guys have a mutual agreement and everybody's cool with the prenup. You want to have that, you know, in place just for some insurance, knowing that you won't lose everything if stuff doesn't work out. You know, if you have assets together, some of that stuff can get split up in that whole process too. So, you know, a divorce can be very costly, man. I guess that's where I'm getting at. A divorce can be very costly. So, you know, a marriage can be a beautiful thing if you have two like-minded people, two people that really love each other. I think a marriage can be a beautiful thing, man. And I also think, you know, if you do have a good partner, you guys can build some amazing things together. It can be great, but unfortunately, we live in a world where divorces do happen, and the divorce rates are pretty high. And one of the main causes of divorce happens to be finances. So, you know, ironically. So we talked about child support. We talked about failed relationships. We talked about failed marriages. Divorce in particular. Something else that could just eat away at your income and really make it a lot harder for you to build wealth, save money, invest, pay off debt, all that kind of stuff like that is kids. I love kids. Kids are a blessing. But here's the thing. When a lot of people have kids, a lot of people don't financially plan for kids until the kid is already here, right? They don't pre-plan financially for a kid to come into the equation. I know a lot of people, right, personally, that are in situations where they're struggling with the family that they currently have, but they'll go out and have another kid and another kid, and it's like you're just putting yourself further and further behind the 8 ball. You're like hustling backwards. You got to think with this. I wanted to say something else, but you know, I got a PG channel, right? But use your head, man, because a lot of people find themselves in these type of situations. Listen, guys, I talk about this on my channel a lot. The life that we create for ourselves comes down to our choices, the choices that we make. If you make dumb decisions and you have bad judgment, it's going to show up in your life. It's going to show up. You're going to see it. So we got to use better judgment. We got to be better decision makers to have better lives in every aspect of our lives. When it comes to our health, when it comes to our wealth, all of that type of stuff. In order for those areas of your life to be the best that they can be, it's going to come down to the choices that you make. We just got to be smart. Also, when it comes to the kids are an expense, man. Kids are expensive. Diapers, formula, daycare. You know how much daycare is? All of that stuff, man, can really make it difficult for you to save your money, invest your money, and just build wealth, because you have all these other expenses that you created. Think about all that stuff. And again, I know some people watching right now, you guys are probably in this situation already. All I can tell you is that, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to go out here, or have to go out here, and try to find another way to supplement your income. You got to make more money, because now you've pretty much forced your own hand. Unless you want to continue to struggle, if you're in a struggling position, you're going to have to go out here and try to make something happen, right? Whereas if you wasn't in that situation, you probably could just kick back and not have to work 80 hours a week, because you don't have all these other financial obligations to deal with. So, something to think about, guys. The last one is going to be debt. When you start going out here and buying all these things, a lot of the stuff that you probably don't need, it's coming out of your pay. It's coming out of your pay. So maybe you're making this amount of money up here, right? You got a high income, but guess what? Your expenses are like right here. They're like neck and neck. So you done stretch yourself so thin to where you barely got any money at the end of the month to do anything with. You barely got any money. If they tell you, look, we're cutting off overtime right now, you can't work no more overtime, you stuck, because you've been relying on that overtime. You factor that into your overall monthly earnings, the overtime, which never do that. Never factor in. I don't care if you working 10 hours overtime every week. Don't factor that in to your earnings, to your net, because at any moment that stuff can get cut off. So don't base whatever it is, whatever your financial obligations are, don't base it on that. You got to be smart, because that OT is not necessarily guaranteed. I remember hearing a nurse one time say a lot of her coworkers went out and bought, a lot of expensive cars. They went out and bought all these expensive handbags. They were taking all these trips because they were making a lot of money, getting a lot of overtime. And then all of a sudden, the hospital administration cut the overtime hours out, right? So now all of her coworkers had all of these high expenses, but the income wasn't there anymore because they wasn't getting the overtime. And so if you're living like that, that's going to come back to bite you. So you always be safe than sorry. When I do my numbers, when I'm calculating my monthly expenses and the income that I believe I'm going to make, because as a food service delivery driver, no check is really the same, but I know what I'm going to make for the most part from week to week. But I always just round down. I do the lowest number that I know I'm not going to go under. And every time I always make about $150 more than what I calculated. So to me, that's just extra. You know what I mean? I try to be safe than sorry. So that's how I run my numbers. You got to consider all that stuff, right? That's all I'm saying, man. Think about this, because all of those scenarios I just mentioned can really just suck you dry, all right? And it can really put you in a bad financial situation. And I'm telling you, when you don't have a lot of debt to deal with, and you don't have all these crazy financial obligations, and you have money at the end of the month, you can sleep really good at night. I promise you, you can sleep really good at night. So that's all I got for you guys, man. Just try to avoid these type of situations, because they can be some wealth killers. They can be some paycheck killers, and you just don't want to have to deal with that if you can help it. All right, listen, man, that's all I got for you. I actually pulled up in this Walmart parking lot just so I could talk to y'all. I don't even need that for Walmart, but I hope you guys got something out of this video. Let me know in the comment section. Look, until the next video, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.